The neon lights of Nexus Station flickered across Commander Vexitar's scarred face as he stepped into the crowded cantina. Smoke from a dozen different worlds swirled in the air, mixing the acrid smell of Krillian spice with the metallic tang of oxygenated recyclers. This was where the galaxy's most dangerous beings came to find work, and today Vexitar had a job that would make them all rich. His 3 black eyes swept across the room, cataloguing the assembled killers. In the far corner, Razor Claw Thak hunched over a steaming mug of fermented grack, his cybernetic arms sparking occasionally as neural implants processed tactical data. The Cathari mercenary was built like a walking weapons platform, with chrome-plated claws that could slice through starship hull plating. Near the bar, Gornax the Vraxian battle chief argued loudly with a group of smaller aliens about payment. Rates. His massive frame towered over everyone else, tusks yellowed from countless battles, and ritual scars covering every inch of his hide. The Vraxians were born warriors, bred for conquest across 1,000 worlds. "Listen up, scum," Vexitar's voice cut through the cantina noise like a plasma blade. Conversations died as every predator in the room turned toward him. "I've got work, real work, the kind that pays enough to buy your own moon." Thak's mechanical eye whirred as it focused on the Korthani commander. "What's the catch, Three Eyes? Nobody pays premium rates for easy jobs." Vexitar smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Simple extraction mission, small colony world on the rim. We go in, take what we need, leave. The locals won't be a problem." "What species?" growled Gornax, his massive fists clenching. "Zephyrian. Shock troops. Mantid hive warriors. Those crystal beings from the Cygnus sector." "Better." Vexitar's grin widened. "Humans." The cantina erupted in laughter. Thak's cybernetic implants actually sparked from the humor overload. "Humans? Those pathetic furless mammals? You're joking." "I've studied their biology," said Dr. Zixlack, a spider-like creature with 8 analytical eyes. "Average human adult, 1.7 meters tall, 70 kilograms mass. No natural weapons, no armor plating, no enhanced reflexes. Their bone density is laughable, and their muscle fiber efficiency is 40% below galactic standard." Gornax slammed his fist on the table, sending drinks flying. "I've seen human combat footage. They move like they're walking through thick liquid. No tactical awareness, no killer instinct. How did such a weak species even survive to reach space?" "Pure luck," Thak added, his mechanical voice buzzing with amusement. "They probably stumbled into hyperspace technology by accident. I heard. They still use projectile weapons that fire tiny metal pellets. Metal pellets against energy shields and powered armor." Vexitar pulled up a holographic display showing the target colony. The 3-dimensional image rotated slowly, revealing a modest settlement of maybe 2,000 inhabitants. Simple prefab. Buildings, agricultural sectors, a small mining operation extracting rare minerals from the planet's crust. "The colony is called New Busan," he explained. "Standard human agricultural settlement. They've been mining quantum crystals for the past 5 standard years. Our employer wants their geological survey data and mineral extraction protocols." "What's our opposition?" asked a mantis-like Thrakari assassin, his blade arms clicking together. "Colony. Security consists of 12 humans with basic training and obsolete weapons. No military installations, no orbital defenses, no distress beacons that can reach civilized space in time to matter." The assembled mercenaries exchanged glances of pure greed. This was easier than they'd dared hope. "The payment?" Gornax rumbled. 10 million credits. Each. Silence fell over the cantina like a death shroud. 10 million credits was enough to retire on, enough to buy a small fleet of ships, enough to purchase entire worlds in the Outer Rim. "For fighting humans." Thak's voice carried a note of disbelief. "That's more than we earned taking down the Nexus Prime Space Fortress." Vexitar shrugged his 4 shoulders. "The employer is generous. They want this done quickly and quietly. No survivors, no witnesses, no complications. Dr. Zixlack's 8. Eyes glittered with calculation. "The math doesn't compute. Why pay premium rates for exterminating insects?" "Because," Vexitar said slowly, "the employer has a schedule to keep. The colony's next supply ship arrives in 6 standard days. We..." Need to be finished and gone before then. Gornak stood to his full 3-meter height, his tusks gleaming under the station's artificial lights. I accept. My clan needs new weapons anyway. Count me in, Thak growled, his cybernetic arm extending into a wicked blade. I could use target practice. One by one, the deadliest killers in known space agreed to the contract. They would travel to a small human colony, take what they needed, and eliminate any witnesses. Simple work for simple minds. None of them questioned why the payment was so unusually high for such an easy target. None of them wondered why their employer insisted on complete annihilation rather than subtle theft. None of them had ever heard the humans saying about sleeping dogs. They were about to learn why some dogs should never be awakened. The mercenary fleet tore through hyperspace like a pack of metal wolves, their engines screaming across the void. Commander Vexistar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death's Edge, watching the swirling tunnel of distorted space-time that would deliver them to easy victory and incredible wealth. Dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds, announced the ship's AI in its cold mechanical voice. Target system detected. No defensive signatures on long-range sensors. Vextar's 3 eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The humans probably didn't even know they were coming. This would be over before lunch. All ships, battle positions, he commanded over the fleet comm. Remember, we want those mining records intact. Try not to vaporize the entire planet. Laughter crackled across the communication channels. Thak's voice buzzed through the speakers from his assault cruiser. Don't worry, Commander. I'll leave enough humans alive to tell us where they hid the good stuff. The hyperspace tunnel collapsed around them, and suddenly they were floating in normal space above a small blue-green world. Vextar expected to see a peaceful agricultural colony spread across the planet's surface, maybe a few orbital platforms for communication. Instead, his tactical display lit up like a nightmare. What in the 7 hells? He snarled, staring at the readings. Those aren't military installations. Massive mining laser arrays, the kind used to carve asteroids into manageable chunks, had been repositioned to point directly at the fleet. The industrial beams were designed to slice through solid rock, but they would work just as well on Starship. Armor! Incoming! Screamed the weapons officer, as the first laser burst seared past the flagship's hull, leaving a glowing scar across the ablative plating. The mercenary ships scattered, but the human defenses were ready for them. Cargo haulers, the kind used to transport ore from planet to station, swarmed out from behind the world's larger moon. They shouldn't have been able to move that fast, but somehow the humans had souped up their engines and welded weapons to their hulls. This is impossible! Gornax's voice roared over the comm from his battle cruiser. These are civilian ships. How are they keeping up with my fighters? Vextar watched in growing horror as one of his elite Vraxian interceptors exploded under fire from what looked like a modified garbage scow. The human ship spun and twisted through space with impossible grace, its pilot pulling maneuvers that should have turned any organic being into paste. "Sir," shouted his tactical officer, a nervous Centaurian with 6 arms that were now frantically working multiple control panels. The human ships are using some kind of networked coordination. They're sharing targeting data and movement patterns in real time. Another explosion lit up the void as Thak's personal fighter wing engaged a group of converted mining vessels. The humans had somehow turned industrial equipment into weapons of war. Rock-drilling lasers carved through fighter shields, while cargo manipulator arms reached out to literally grab and crush smaller craft. "How are they doing this?" Vexitar demanded, his voice climbing to a shriek. "Humans don't have this kind of technology." On the planet's surface, Thak's ground assault teams were having their own problems. The Cathari cyborg had expected to find terrified farmers hiding in their homes, maybe a few security guards with outdated weapons. Instead, he found ghost towns. "Strike Team Alpha to command," he reported, his mechanical voice carrying notes of confusion. "The colony appears to be abandoned. No life signs in any of the surface structures." "Check the underground areas," Vextar ordered, trying to keep panic out of his voice as another mercenary ship exploded in the background. "They have to be hiding somewhere." Thak kicked down the door of what looked like a community center, his cybernetic arm extending into a plasma cannon. The building was empty except for overturned tables and scattered belongings. It looked like the humans had left in a hurry, but there were no signs of panic or chaos. "This is too organized," muttered one of his squad members, a Zephyrian warrior with acid-dripping claws. "They knew we were coming." Deep underground, in mining tunnels that hadn't appeared on any orbital survey, Jin-Ho adjusted his makeshift command console. The middle-aged farmer looked nothing like a military commander, but his eyes held the sharp focus of someone fighting for everything he loved. "Yunji, how are our orbital defenses holding up?" he asked into his comm unit, which was actually a modified mining coordination system. "The big ships are keeping their distance, Dad," came his daughter's voice from the improvised control center they'd built in the old processing facility. "But they're launching ground troops." "Hyunwoo, are the tunnel networks ready?" "Yes, Uncle," replied the young man, who'd been an engineering student before the mercenaries arrived. "We've turned every mining shaft into a defensive position. They'll have to fight for every meter." Above them, Thak's forces were discovering that the entire underground complex had been converted into a fortress. Every tunnel junction had been reinforced, every shaft equipped with improvised weapons made from mining equipment. The humans had literally rebuilt their world into a weapon. "Sir," reported a Kethari scout, his voice shaking, "we're picking up massive movement in the mining network. The entire underground is alive with contacts." Vextar felt something crawl up his spine that he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare across the galaxy. These weren't the helpless primitives he'd been promised. These were people who had turned their entire world into a trap, and his elite mercenaries were walking straight into it. "All units," he commanded, his voice no longer confident, "proceed with extreme caution. Something is very wrong here." 300 meters below the surface, Jin-Ho sat hunched over a collection of mining computers that had been welded together with spare parts and determination. The 52-year-old farmer's hands, scarred from decades of working the soil, moved across keyboards with surprising precision. His wire-rimmed glasses reflected the glow of dozens of monitors showing tunnel maps, troop movements, and status. Reports from across the colony. "Yunji, Sector 7 status report." He spoke into a headset that had started life as a mining foreman's communication gear. "All families secured in the deep shafts, Papa." His daughter's voice crackled through the makeshift radio network. At 28, Yunji had been the colony's head librarian before the mercenaries arrived. Now she coordinated the evacuation of over 300 children and elderly colonists into the deepest, safest parts of the mine system. "Hyunwoo is keeping the little ones calm with songs," she continued. "Old folk melodies from Earth. You should hear them echo through the tunnels. It's actually beautiful." Jin-Ho smiled despite the chaos around him. His nephew Hyunwoo had been studying agricultural engineering at the Colony University. The 22-year-old had never held a weapon in his life, but he'd helped design the tunnel defense systems using nothing but mining equipment and creativity. "How long can we hold them?" asked Min-Soo, the colony's former librarian coordinator, who now served as their intelligence officer. The quiet woman had somehow turned the colony's computer network into a surveillance system that would make military commanders jealous. "As long as we need to," Jin-Ho replied, adjusting his glasses. "These tunnels go down nearly a kilometer. We've got food, water, and enough supplies for months." Above them, the real battle was just beginning. Thak's cybernetic boot stepped onto what looked like solid ground, only to discover it was actually a conveyor belt that immediately began dragging him toward a massive ore crusher. His enhanced reflexes kicked in, allowing him to leap clear just as the industrial machine roared to life, its metal teeth grinding hungrily. "Clever," he admitted, his mechanical voice carrying grudging respect. "They've turned their entire surface into a weapon." His squad of elite Cathari commandos moved through what had been the colony's main processing facility, but every piece of equipment seemed designed to kill them. Ore sorting machines fired chunks of rock like artillery shells. Automated loading cranes swung massive containers like clubs. Even the simple mining carts had been rigged to explode when stepped on. "Contact left," screamed Sergeant Claxon, as a figure in mining coveralls popped up from behind a pile of equipment. The human looked like a maintenance worker, complete with tool belt and safety helmet, but the modified plasma torch in his hands carved through powered armor like it was paper. Dong-Su had been the colony's chief mechanic for 15 years. He knew every piece of equipment in the facility, every control system, every safety protocol. More importantly, he knew how to turn safety protocols off. "This is Dong Su to command," he spoke into his comm unit while dodging plasma fire from the alien soldiers. "The big metal one with all the robot parts is heading toward Processing Bay 3. "Copy that," came Jamin's voice from the improvised command center. The 18-year-old had been planning to study computer science before the invasion. Now he coordinated defensive systems, using skills he'd learned from gaming and pure necessity. "Activating Bay 3 containment protocols," Jamin announced. Massive blast doors, designed to contain industrial accidents, slammed shut around Thak's position. Emergency venting systems pumped superheated steam into the sealed chamber. Thak's cybernetic systems protected him from the heat, but his organic squad mates weren't so lucky. They screamed and scrambled for cover as industrial-grade steam filled the air. "How are they doing this?" Thak demanded, his voice echoing in the sealed chamber. "These are civilians." Deep in the tunnels, Bokjar tended to a group of frightened children while monitoring tactical reports on a tablet. The 73-year-old grandmother had been a teacher before retirement. But war had a way of bringing out hidden strengths. Her calm voice and steady presence kept the children from panicking, even as explosions echoed from above. "Tell me a story, Grandma Bokjar," whispered little Yejin, a 6-year-old with wide eyes and a trembling lip. "Once upon a time," Bokjar began, her weathered hands stroking the child's hair. "There were brave farmers who had to protect their home from monsters. But these farmers were very smart, and they knew their land better than any monster ever could. Meanwhile, So Young worked frantically at a jury-rigged control station. The 25-year-old engineer had helped design the colony's mining systems, but now she was using that knowledge to wage war. Every tunnel had sensors, every shaft had cameras, and every system could be controlled from her position. "They're trying to breach Tunnel Complex C," she reported to Jinho. "Should I flood it?" "Wait until they're fully committed," Jinho replied, studying his displays. "Let them think they found a way through." Above ground, Thak finally broke free from the containment chamber, his armor scarred and his temper flaring. But as his squad regrouped, they found themselves facing something that shouldn't have been possible. An elderly man in farming overalls stood at the end of the corridor, holding what looked like a modified crop sprayer. His name was Wu Jin, and he'd been tending vegetables for 40 years, but the device in his hands was spraying something far more dangerous than pesticide. "Acid!" screamed one of the Kethari soldiers as their armor began dissolving. "He's using industrial solvent." Wu Jin had simply modified his agricultural equipment with chemicals from the mining operation. What had once nurtured crops now ate through alien battle armor like it was made of paper. "They're not soldiers," Thak reported to his command ship, his mechanical voice carrying notes of disbelief and growing fear. "But they fight like demons possessed. Every piece of equipment here has been turned into a weapon. Every colonist is a combatant." In the depths of the mine, Jinho listened to the reports with grim satisfaction. His people weren't warriors, but they were something perhaps more dangerous. They were families fighting for their children's future, and they knew every rock, every tunnel, every system on this world. "How are we doing?" asked Yunji over the comm. "We're holding," Jinho replied, watching as another squad of mercenaries walked into a carefully prepared trap. These aliens came here expecting to fight sheep. Instead, they're fighting farmers who know their land. Above them, the battle raged. On but deep in the tunnels, children sang old songs while their parents and grandparents fought with tools and determination against the deadliest killers in the galaxy. In a converted storage room 4 levels below ground, Minsu sat surrounded by screens that flickered with data streams from across the colony. The 34-year-old woman had spent her entire adult life organizing books and managing library databases. She'd never imagined those same skills would one day coordinate a war. Her fingers flew across multiple keyboards, each connected to different systems throughout the mining complex. Agricultural sensors became motion detectors. Environmental monitors became early warning systems. Even the colony's weather prediction network had been repurposed to track enemy movement patterns. "Thak's squad is moving through Section D7, she announced into her headset, her voice calm despite the chaos. Predicted route suggests they're heading for the main power junction. Copy that, came Hyun-woo's voice from another tunnel. Redirecting power flow to backup systems and setting up surprise number 3. Min-soo had discovered something the mercenaries couldn't understand. Civilian networks were designed to be flexible, to adapt, to work around problems. Military systems were built for specific purposes, but civilian technology was built to be useful in ways no one had originally planned. Information warfare, she murmured to herself, watching as her improvised surveillance network tracked every alien soldier in real time. They teach this in military academies, but they don't understand it like someone who spent years making broken systems work. 3 tunnels away, Jae-min crouched over a control panel that had been cobbled together from farm equipment and mining. Computers. The 18-year-old's eyes were bloodshot from staring at screens, but his hands remained steady as he piloted drones through the colony's ventilation systems. "Grandma, can you see the feed from Drone 7? He asked into his comm unit. "Yes, dear," came Bokjar's calm voice from the evacuation center. "The alien with the big tusks is trying to break through the blast door in Section C. He looks very angry." Jae-min almost smiled despite everything. His 73-year-old grandmother was providing tactical analysis while simultaneously serving soup to frightened children and directing families to safer areas. She'd been a teacher for 40 years, and apparently those skills translated perfectly to coordinating refugee movements. "Should I activate the steam vents in that section?" Jae-min asked. "Not yet, sweetie," Bokjar replied, her voice carrying the patience she'd learned from decades of managing classroom chaos. "Let him work at it for a while. When he's fully committed, then we spring the trap." The drones Jae-min controlled had started life as agricultural surveillance units, designed to monitor crop health and soil conditions, but with some creative reprogramming, they'd become the eyes and ears of the human resistance. Each unit was small enough to move through air vents undetected, providing real-time intelligence on enemy positions. "Drone 4 is showing movement in the main processing facility," he reported. "Looks like they're trying to set up some kind of command post." "Acknowledged," Min-soo replied from her information center. "I'm adjusting defensive algorithms to account for their new position." Meanwhile, in what had been the colony's main cafeteria, So Young worked frantically to coordinate the food distribution network. The 25-year-old agricultural engineer had realized that keeping people fed was just as important as keeping them alive, and the colony's automated kitchens could be operated remotely from the deep tunnels. "This is impossible," she muttered, watching her screens show cooking systems preparing meals 4 levels above, while alien soldiers searched the same areas. "I'm literally making lunch while there's a war happening upstairs." But that was exactly what made the human defense so effective. They weren't thinking like soldiers. They were thinking like people who needed to take care of their community. And that meant everything from tactical coordination to making sure the children had warm meals. In the deepest part of the mining complex, Jin-ho sat across from a captured Cathari scout who'd been separated from his squad during a tunnel collapse. The alien soldier looked confused and frightened, his cybernetic implants sparking from damage sustained in the fall. "Please," the alien whispered in broken Standard Galactic. "I don't understand. Why are you fighting so hard? We were told humans were weak, cowardly." Jin-ho removed his wire-rimmed glasses and cleaned them carefully, a habit he'd developed during 30 years of farming. His calloused hands showed the results of decades working the soil, and his kind eyes held no anger toward his prisoner. "We don't want to fight," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who'd been forced into an impossible situation. "All we wanted was to grow our crops, raise our children, and live in peace." The Cathari scout stared at him with confusion. "Then why resist? Why not surrender? We would have taken what we needed and left." Jin-ho's expression hardened, and for a moment the captured mercenary saw something that made his enhanced survival instincts scream warnings. "Because you threatened our families," Jin-ho said, his voice still quiet but carrying an edge that cut through the alien's confidence like a blade. "You came here to hurt our children, to destroy our homes, to kill our people. And when you threaten our children," his eyes met the alien's mechanical senses directly, "then we become something else entirely. The Cathari scout's combat computer, ran analysis protocols on the humans' biometric readings, and came back with results that made no sense. This wasn't a trained warrior. This was a farmer, a civilian, someone who should have been easy prey for professional killers. But the readings also showed something else, a determination so absolute, so unwavering, that the Scouts' military programming couldn't find any weakness. To exploit. This human would die before he let harm come to his family, and that made him more dangerous than any soldier. Throughout the tunnels, similar realizations were dawning on the scattered mercenary forces. The humans they were fighting weren't military personnel. They were teachers and farmers, librarians and mechanics, grandparents and teenagers. People who had never held weapons before, but who fought with creativity and determination that professional soldiers couldn't match. "Command, this is Thak," the cyborg mercenary reported from his position in the processing facility. "We're not fighting an army. We're fighting an entire population that's decided they won't surrender." Above ground, Vextar listened to the reports from his flagship with growing horror. His elite mercenaries were being outfought by civilians, using improvised weapons and homemade tactics. These humans had turned their entire world into a weapon, and every colonist was willing to die rather than see their families harmed. "How many casualties?" he asked his tactical officer. 47% of ground forces dead or missing," came the reply. "And sir, the humans aren't taking prisoners. They're not executing them either. They're just making them irrelevant." Vextar didn't understand what that meant until he saw the reports. Captured mercenaries were being treated for their injuries, fed, and kept safe. But they were also being completely isolated from their command structure, their weapons confiscated, their communication gear destroyed. The humans were fighting a war not to kill their enemies, but to protect their families. And that difference was making all the difference in the galaxy. The Death's Edge limped through space, its hull scarred by mining lasers and improvised weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate military-grade armor. Commander Vextar sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the devastating truth. 60% of his fleet was gone. Elite mercenaries who had conquered star systems and brought down galactic governments had been defeated by farmers with modified crop dusters. "Sir," his communications officer reported, his voice shaking, "we're still receiving transmissions from the planet's surface." "Military channels?" Vextar asked, though he already knew the answer would make everything worse. "No, sir. Civilian communications." "Family check-ins." The bridge speakers crackled to life with intercepted radio chatter from the human colony. What the mercenaries heard made their blood run cold. "Young-Sik, are you okay?" "I heard explosions near the processing center. I'm fine, Mum. Just helping clean up the mess those aliens left." "How's little Haewon?" "She's safe in the deep tunnels with teacher Minjung. They're having a drawing contest to keep the children calm." Vextar's three eyes widened in disbelief. These people were talking like they'd just weathered a bad storm, not fought off the deadliest mercenary force in known space. There was no boasting, no celebrating victory over superior enemies, just families checking on each other. "More incoming transmissions, sir," the communications officer continued, his voice barely a whisper. "Grandpa Wu Jin, thank you for fixing the water pumps. The children were getting thirsty." "No problem, dear, that's what grandpas are for." "Is everyone accounted for in Sector 12? "Yes, even Mrs. Park's cats are safe." Dong Hyun made sure to check all the storage areas. Thak's scarred face appeared on the main view screen from his damaged assault cruiser. The cyborg's mechanical components sparked occasionally, and his organic eye held something that hadn't been there before. "Fear." "Commander," he reported, his synthesized voice carrying notes of confusion. "I've been analyzing our combat footage. These humans, they're not soldiers. The woman who nearly killed my entire squad with industrial solvent was a vegetable farmer. The old man who turned the processing facility into a death trap teaches children how to read." "Impossible," Gornax's voice rumbled through the comm system from his battle cruiser. The Vraxian warrior's ship was missing half its weapon systems, destroyed by converted garbage haulers. No civilian population could mount this kind of resistance. "That's just it," Thak continued, his mechanical voice processing data even as he spoke. "They weren't mounting military resistance. They were protecting their families. Every tactic, every trap, every improvised weapon. It was all designed around keeping their children safe. Dr. Zixlak's spider-like form scuttled across the bridge of his research vessel, his 8 analytical eyes reviewing biological data. "I've been studying the human behavior patterns," he announced. "Their combat effectiveness increased exponentially when family units were threatened. It's as if they become an entirely different species." Vextar pulled up recordings from the battle, watching in horrified fascination as ordinary humans performed impossible feats. A middle-aged librarian had single-handedly coordinated defensive systems that outperformed military AI. A teenage boy had turned agricultural drones into a surveillance network that tracked every mercenary movement. An elderly grandmother had directed evacuation protocols while simultaneously cooking meals for defenders. "These readings can't be correct," he muttered, staring at the data. "According to our intelligence, humans have average reflexes, limited problem-solving abilities, and no natural weapons." The intelligence was wrong. Thak's voice cut through his confusion. "They don't have natural weapons. They make weapons out of everything around them. They don't have enhanced reflexes. They have something worse. They have creativity." On the planet's surface, the aftermath of battle told a story that would haunt the surviving mercenaries for the rest of their lives. The humans had suffered casualties, but they'd turned their entire world into a weapon, using nothing but determination and ingenuity. Mining equipment had become artillery. Agricultural systems had become surveillance networks. Even the colonies. Children had contributed by staying calm and following evacuation procedures that kept them safe. "Sir," the communications officer reported again, "we're receiving a direct transmission from the colony leader." Jinho's face appeared on the main screen, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the light from emergency systems. Behind him, other colonists worked to repair damage from the battle, but their movements were calm, purposeful, like people cleaning up after a natural disaster rather than a military engagement. "Commander Vextar," Jinho said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd led his people through their darkest hour. "Your surviving forces are welcome to retrieve their wounded. We don't believe in leaving anyone to suffer, even those who came here to harm us." "Why?" Vextar asked, the question torn from his throat by disbelief. "We came here to destroy you." Jinho's expression softened slightly. "Because that's not who we are. We fought to protect our families, not to become killers. Your people are someone's family too." The transmission ended, leaving the mercenary fleet in stunned silence. Within days, the story spread through every cantina, spaceport, and mercenary outpost in known space. The details changed with each telling, but the core message remained the same. An elite mercenary force had been defeated by human farmers using improvised weapons and desperate courage. "Never take contracts against humans," became the new warning whispered in the darkest corners of the galaxy. "They don't fight for money or glory or conquest. They fight for family, and that makes them the most dangerous species in the universe." Back on the colony world, Jinho walked through the damaged community center, his 5-year-old granddaughter Ye Jin's small hand clasped in his own. The building would need extensive repairs, but it was still standing. Like his people, it had survived. "Grandpa," Ye Jin asked, looking up at him with wide eyes, "are the bad aliens gone?" Jinho knelt down to her level, adjusting his glasses as he smiled at the child who represented everything they'd fought to protect. "Yes, sweetheart, they're gone, and they won't be coming back." "Because we're stronger than them?" Jinho considered the question carefully. Around them, colonists worked together to rebuild what had been damaged, to heal what had been hurt, to restore the peaceful life they'd carved out among the stars. "No," he said finally, "because we're family, and family protects each other." As the sun set over New Busan, casting long shadows across the colony, the humans continued their work. They had learned something about themselves during the battle, that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when the ones they loved were threatened. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget. The end.